First case I will be discussing is Neves versus Bartlett, Officer Neves. This case has to do with a festival that happened in Alaska. Officer Neves and one of his officers were patrolling one of the festivals that was happening in Alaska. It's pretty known that these festivals, people are usually pretty drunk or under the influence of drugs or alcohol. And officers understand that. Officer Neves was patrolling this festival, and he had asked Bartlett to remove his keg stand and move it inside. Bartlett refused to move his keg. He gave the officers presumable reason to assume that he was drunk. He was slurring his words. He was loud. But Officer Neves decided to move on from the situation until later finding Bartlett yelling at one of his other officers for talking to a teenager that was on the scene. The two officers decided to arrest Bartlett for harassment, disorderly conduct, resisting arrest, and assault under Alaska law. Bartlett argued that he was arrested because he exercised his First Amendment right when he decided not to talk to Officer Neves, and because he told the other officer not to talk to a teenager. The officer stated that they had probable cause to arrest him because they could tell that he was drunk from slurring his words, being loud, being physical, and even when it got to the point that Bartlett needed to be pushed off one of the officers. The district court granted summary judgment to the officers for these claims after Bartlett sued the two officers for false arrest, excessive force, and retaliatory arrest. Bartlett appealed the Ninth Circuit, and they affirmed in part and reversed in part. The circuit court agreed that the officers had probable cause. The court reversed the district's court dismissal of Bartlett's retaliatory arrest claim. The Supreme Court of the United States decided that probable cause should defeat a retaliatory arrest claim brought in the First Amendment. So that would be the first case. The second case I'll be discussing is Mitchell versus Wisconsin. Mitchell versus Wisconsin was a case from 2019. A man had been called. The cops were called because a man had been drunk driving, allegedly. The cops showed up at the scene. They found this man on the beach, shirtless. He was having trouble standing up. He was slurring his words. He gave the officers many reasons to assume that he was drunk. After the officers continued to talk to him, he admitted that he had been drinking. He was drinking on the beach while they were conversing. And then after that, he admitted to driving to the beach. So the officers decided to do a breathalyzer test and arrest the man. But during this arrest, his conditions got worse, and they decided that they needed to transport the man to a hospital. During the transportation, the man went unconscious. So when they got to the hospital, the officer ordered the doctors to do a blood draw for the alcohol level in his system. After Mitchell alleged that the warrantless blood draw violated his rights under the Fourth Amendment to the United States, the court stated that by driving his van on the highway in Wisconsin, he was consenting to having blood drawn, and being unconscious is not presumed to withdraw consent. It was decided that the blood draw was lawful. Mitchell then appealed the conviction on the reason that the blood draw violated his Fourth Amendment right to be free from unreasonable searches and seizures. The Supreme Court affirmed this as well. So in conclusion of this case, it's lawful for an officer to order a doctor to have blood drawn from someone that they're arresting just for the reason of the blood alcohol level in their blood, because this is evidence that was used in court in this case and in the future will be used in court. The third case I'll be discussing is Gamble versus United States. This has to do with the Fifth Amendment. The Fifth Amendment is one that says that you cannot be tried for the same offense twice. In this situation, actually a prior convicted felon, was arrested in Alabama during this traffic stop. They found a gun, so he was arrested and prosecuted in the state and sentenced to 1 year. His offense was a violation of the federal law as well. For this reason, he was separately prosecuted and sentenced to a 46-month stay in a federal prison. Gamble tried to appeal the federal court decision. He did not get the results he wanted, though. The courts upheld the jurisdiction because the federal and state courts are two separate entities, the prosecution of the same crime does not apply to two different courts. Therefore, it was lawful and he was held responsible for the same crime from two different courts. The impacts of this are huge because people presume just what this man had presumed, that the same crime he couldn't be held accountable in two different courts, but you can. And from this case, you can learn that.